Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Austin James Jackson. I'm going to talk to you guys today about the top 5 reasons why your landscape photography photos might not be sharp. Now there's a variety of factors that can influence this, including things that I'm not going to cover in this video, but these top 5 tips are going to cover probably 90% of the reasons why your photos are not tack sharp. I'm also going to tell you guys at the end my recommendation on how to fix photos that might not be sharp. So if you're watching this video, maybe you have some photos that aren't sharp. So I want to tell you guys how to avoid that next time. But in the meantime, I also want to show you guys a cool little trick, cool little tool that you guys can use in order to fix those photos. So let's jump into reason number 1. Now, the first reason why your photos maybe aren't so sharp is because you're not using a tripod. Now, a lot of landscape photographers religiously use a tripod and other landscape photographers never use a tripod. I highly recommend bringing a tripod on every shoot that you can. I know it's one more thing you need to carry, but it's always nice to have. Now, if you're out shooting in the middle of the day, you likely don't need a tripod, but when you're shooting at night or later in the evening or earlier in the morning when it's a little bit darker outside, you need a tripod. And this is going to help you to not only find better compositions, but also to get sharper photos. It's going to help you slow down a little bit in the field. It's going to help you dial in that focus point, make sure that everything is just perfect, review your shots, rather than shooting run and gun, which definitely has a time and a place that it works really well. But for landscape photography, it's really nice if you can kind of slow down, set up a tripod, think about everything, review your shots, make sure they're sharp in the field. And you also need a tripod because of reason number 2, which we're going to jump into. Reason number 2 is the shutter speed. So it's very, very important that you are using a fast enough shutter speed if you aren't using a tripod. There's multiple reasons why your photo could be blurry due to shutter speed, and the first one is because you're moving the camera as you're shooting the photo. Now, I know because you're just clicking the shutter, it doesn't seem like you're moving the camera that much, but if you're shooting a slower shutter speed, like say half a second or a quarter of a second, you actually are moving the camera within that time frame and creating a blurry photo. Now, when that is the problem, you're going to see that your whole photo is going to be blurry. It's going to be really obvious. Now, the other shutter speed problem that you may run into is if the shutter speed is a little bit too slow for the scene, maybe there's some wind blowing some trees, you may notice just parts of your scene are blurry. If just parts of the scene are blurry, it's because your shutter speed was too slow and there was some wind blowing things around. In this instance, just speed up the shutter speed. Now, for those cases where you have to use a slow shutter speed, hopefully it's not windy, but if you have to use a slow shutter speed because you need to let in more light, you definitely need to use a tripod, which goes back to problem number 1. Problem number 3 has to do with focus settings. Now, a lot of landscape photographers really love to tell you that you should be using manual focus to dial in the absolute best focus. I'm here to tell you, do not use manual focus unless you're shooting at blue hour or at night. The reason why you don't use manual focus during the day is because there is going to be a little bit of user error. Sure, maybe you think you can get it absolutely perfect, even better than the autofocus a lot of times, but I'm here to tell you that there will be times where you will mess up the manual focus, you'll accidentally bump the focus ring, you won't be able to see it very well, and the autofocus on the camera is going to mess up less frequently than you dialing in the manual focus, in my opinion. Of course, this depends on the photographer, but in my opinion, definitely stick with autofocus. Now, for landscapes, generally speaking, we're going to want to shoot an autofocus single. The reason why we want to do that is because we don't need continuous focus. A lot of sports photographers will use the AFC, or autofocus continuous mode, because this allows them to keep tracking a subject and to keep the subject in focus if it's moving to or from the photographer. Now, when we're shooting landscapes, usually we're just going to be standing looking at some rocks or some trees or some mountains or whatever, and we're just going to be standing there, and the subject isn't going to be moving closer or further away. So for that reason, we use single shot autofocus, and then we want to dial in the focus point to make sure that it is hitting somewhere important in our scene. So for example, if I'm shooting a scene with flowers in the foreground and a mountain in the background, I need to select whether I want the focus point to be on the flowers or the mountain. More on this problem a little bit later. So this leads us right into problem number 4, which is depth of field. Now, it is literally impossible in one shot, no matter if you have the aperture stopped all the way down, you're at f/22 or f/29, you still will not be able to get a perfectly tack sharp image from front to back if you have a very high depth of field, meaning I've got flowers that are 12 inches away from the front element of my lens, and I've got a mountain that's 4 miles away. You will not be able to get both of these in focus in one shot. Now, for landscape photographers, we do something called focus stacking, and I'll link you guys a video here where you guys can see my focus stacking tutorial. Essentially, essentially what this focus stacking is it allows you to focus on one point and then focus on another. You're going to take two separate images and you're going to combine them in Photoshop. That might sound scary, but I promise you guys it's actually easier than you think, and I will link the video for you guys to check that out so that you can do a focus stack if you want to get your whole scene in focus, which for landscape photography a lot of times is very, very beneficial. Now the fifth and final problem here that might cause some blurry or out of focus photos is going to be that your front element or back element of the lens or the sensor on your camera is dirty. You need to keep these things clean. That's pretty self-explanatory. Generally speaking, dust isn't going to make your image blurry, but if it's really dusty, it could. It's usually water droplets. So as landscape photographers, a lot of times we're out there shooting in the rain, shooting in the most adverse conditions, and we're getting water droplets on our lenses. If that's the case, you just need to keep wiping the lens. I'm telling you guys, there's not any like special trick that the photographers are using. You can hold an umbrella or get an umbrella clip for your tripod if you're really worried about rain, but generally you just have to keep wiping, keep breaking out those microfiber cloths, and just keep wiping to keep that water off the lens. That is the fifth and final reason that I find that most people's photos are blurry or out of focus. Now you've made it this far, and hopefully you're not going to make any of those mistakes anymore, so you won't have too many blurry photos. But if you've already got some blurry photos and you want a good way to fix it, I recently created a tutorial or a review on Topaz Photo AI, or a really new software that's going to help you to basically sharpen and denoise your photos. Topaz Denoise AI is an amazing software that's going to help you guys to remove both motion and lens blur on your photos. I think it works really, really well. It uses AI technology in order to do this, and I'll leave a video here for you guys to check out so you can see that software in action, see if it's worth picking up for you. I honestly use it on almost all of my photos. Even if your photos are sharp, usually there's still a little bit of noise or a little bit of sharpness that could be slightly better, and Topaz Photo AI does a great job of doing that for you. I'm not sponsored by Topaz Photo AI or anything. I just wanted to bring this really nice software to your attention if you're struggling with blurry photos from your camera. And of course, purchasing a nicer camera and nicer lens always helps as well, but I didn't want to list that as one of the 5 reasons because honestly, I'm not going to tell you that you need to buy all this new equipment to fix your blurry photos because honestly, most any camera and lens can take somewhat of a sharp photo. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I've dropped a few links down below that you guys can check out with some equipment that I use, some software I use, all that good stuff. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And as always, I really appreciate your likes and subscribes. Thank you guys so much for checking out this week's video. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.